Did you know a thrust load on a radial load bearing can cause damage or premature failure of the bearing? This ball bearing is designed for a radial load, in other words, a load perpendicular to the shaft axis. If we look at the bearing this way and move to my drawing, let's say you had a shaft coming through the center of our bearing here. As the bearing rotates like this, your load is directly going to be here and here, or here and here. It really depends on the application, but it's going to be perpendicular to the shaft. If we look at the bearing from this angle, this is what you're looking at. Let's say this is our shaft that runs through the inside diameter of the bearing. Again, a radial load will have that load pass through the bearing perpendicular to the axis. A thrust or side load would be parallel to the shaft axis, applying pressure to the side of the bearing. To prevent side load damage when installing a bearing, you want to press on the race that has the friction. So in this case, we're going into a hub, so the outside diameter will be our race with the friction. When installing a bearing onto a shaft, the inner race will be taking all the friction, so that is where you are going to want to apply your pressure. Using a press or a persuader, it's the same shit, different pile. I always give the bearing a spin after install just to make sure there's no roughness. Good habit to get into. These two pictures here will show you how you can damage a bearing on install. Let's say the outside diameter has the friction like in the first bearing I showed you, and you decide to press on the inside diameter. What you're doing is creating pressure right here and right here, which could cause flat spots on either the ball or the races. And the opposite goes for this one. Let's say your friction is on the inside diameter, the shaft, and you decide to press on the outside diameter. You are now increasing the pressure right here and right here. When installing your main crank bearing into the case, you can either freeze the bearing and heat up the case so they fall right in like I do, or you could hit the outside diameter of the bearing so you don't damage the bearing. From there, I'll heat up the inner race of the bearing and drop in the frozen crank. It slides in with ease, with no side load on the bearing. Now in the other case, with the bearing already installed, I'll heat up the inner race of the bearing and drop it down onto the frozen crank, again minimizing side load on the bearing. Even with freezing and heating up parts, you could still get unwanted preload when bolting the two case halves together. If you don't freeze or heat the parts, you're definitely going to have too much preload when bolting them together. By preload, I mean the inner races of the bearing are going to have outwards pressure on them, recreating this situation right here. You'll know if you have too much preload. It'll rotate smooth but have too much resistance. You can correct this with a couple little love taps on each end of the crank. By doing so, the vibration will overcome the static friction between the bearing and the shaft, allowing the bearing to self-align. And remember, all it takes is a couple love taps. You don't gotta send the thing to Pound Town.